Hey everyone, so I'm Manuel, Clément, and I'm really proud to be here today. Like a lot of you, I've seen around, talked to a few of you, and it's been really fun to be here. So I'm honored you're coming to this room. There's other talks, so I'll take it. And today we're going to talk about life at Google and VR/AR prototyping. Why say life at Google and it wasn't in the program? It's because, well, it's too long. And also, I talk about life at Google because the speed at which we do things is directly in correlation or a consequence of the setup in which the life is, the way basically you work there and how you work with people and the way they trust you and the way you can kind of change the role you have organically. And I really believe in that. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is not just to like lay it thick, like, ooh, I work at Google, but you guys may have like a company or you work in a company that you have a possibility to influence in a certain way, and maybe you see things I'm talking about that you don't like, so you make sure you don't do it, or things that you like and you can provide input into how your company works, especially the way the teams are set up to do rapid prototyping. So this is stuff I'm going to cover is just so much stuff. In fact, we have the full hour. We don't have 45 minutes. I asked and they said yes. So we're going to move in. I'm not even going to read this, but there's a ton of stuff. This is me. I'm obviously French. This is the costume I wear at Halloween. So I just kind of am more French than usual. I come from a beautiful town called Marseille, and I do live in America. I have for 17 years, so I'm quite an American guy, I guess, but this is home. We play this thing called pétanque. It's a cousin game of bocce, and you guys probably know this. This is a little closer to France than American audiences I speak to. Yeah, it's the most beautiful picture of Marseille. Not every picture of Marseille is that beautiful, but I chose that one because it's really nice. So this is, after I was at Microsoft for many years, and it was great, I got contacted by Google, and they're working on the self-driving car project. I didn't know they were doing more than just a search engine, I had no idea. This project was very interesting because I'm interested in safety and using technology for reducing the number of lives killed every year on the road. So whether you're for or against self-driving cars, if you actually know the data and how many people die on the road every year just in the US is 35,000 people. That's a Boeing 747 crashing every day. Right? We talk about it normally. We don't talk about this number. That's why I worked there. And it was kind of fun after like 10 years working on screens to be like, hacking Arduinos and doing like just sound design, all kinds of stuff related to self-driving car. So that was the project I started on. It's what I do at home on weekends. So I have two kids. Here it's my son, and then up there my daughter. She's the little thing up there on the table. At least half girls, group of like between 10 and 20 kids. Free class with making skills. So I teach like soldering and like taking things apart, putting back together. And then we have a bunch of Chromebooks to do online learning and programming, and everybody's got Raspberry Pis. It's a really nice project called Codebreaker Society. It started a few years ago, stopped a couple years actually just to take a break because it's very hard to do this on weekends. My mic is like stopping and going. I don't know what's going on. So just to kind of show you my day a little bit is I live in Santa Cruz Mountains. It's really beautiful. It's really far from work, but I don't care. I drive a lot to work. And this is like midway between my house and work. There's this spot at the top of the hills I park and add 10 minutes to my commute by just sitting down and meditating. There's no cars. It's beautiful. So this is that. When I get to work, this is one thing I do is a lot of storyboarding. This is the original storyboard from Self-Driving Car in 2011. It's about like imagining how people, user journeys, like critical user journeys, how people actually use the products, how it's going to change their lives instead of just kind of plugging wires and being in the algorithm all the time, because you got to get your head out of the machine to imagine how users are going to use this thing. Back then, the team was very small. Now it's massive. They have Waymo, the company, and all that. So this is work when I hate this mic thing. And when I'm not like storyboarding and doing stuff like that, I actually also code all day because, as I said, it's very, the roles we have it's hard to define. Everybody asking me, what do you do? UX, design or research or programming. I'm just like, I don't have an answer for you. It just depends which day of the week it is, how far are you from shipping, like what platform you're using, and stuff. So we're coding all day as well. We do a lot of prototyping, and after coding stuff, we try stuff. So this is, reason why I have this is because VR and AR, but especially VR applications are very physical. You're like, you're inside the matrix, right? You like can walk around, pick up stuff. You can touch somebody else. You can talk to them. It's crazy. You probably can do kung fu. I do kung fu as well, by the way, but I don't do it in VR. And so this is a quick video just to show you self-driving car project. And there's no sound. Okay.
We spend so much of our lives driving from place to place. Yes, save us a seat. Shouldn't it be easier and safer to get where we want to go? Since 2009, our team at Google has been developing fully self-driving technology and testing it on real city streets every single day. Until, after more than 1 million miles, we were ready to take a big step forward. In 2015, we completed the world's first truly driverless ride on public roads. Just a person in a car, no steering wheel, no pedal.
Okay, I'm not play the whole thing, but this was Steve Mon. He was our user. So we had him working with us as a consultant, like every day with us, designing stuff, testing every single thing. It was very interesting. That wasn't our only user we tested things with, but definitely somebody who had a lot of input into the product, and it's kind of a North Star, right? You give a car that with no one in it to a blind person, that's like the end goal. It'll take a while, but we did it. So I'm gonna move on really quick. Other things I worked on, and this is about positive tech. That's why I'm not just talking about VR. I'm really proud of these projects. This is Chromebooks. Dirt cheap, starts fast, no virus, blah, blah, blah. System admins love these things. Chromebooks have been in America at least, they're in all the schools, like one-to-one device, they call it, or something like that. So every single student has one of those. Either they can pay for one and they bring it, or the school provides it. My kids are in Google Drive all the time. They do their assignments. They tag comments to their teachers. Really amazing. It's what we do at work. I don't know, I worked on Chrome OS UI. I did a lot of motion design on that, and it was cool to see that. It's just appearing in all the schools now. This is a really quick video of an HTML-based prototype that I worked on, which was when we redesigned Chrome for Android and iOS. This shipped, actually. Interesting thing about this prototype, it was code, I guess, JavaScript and HTML. But the developers had access to all this because it wasn't a video, right? So, and also the user could test it. At least back then, it was quite something like the engineers have access to this. So because I had code, and the way I wrote the code was, I made variables and blah, 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 like the whole structure of the thing, and even the topology in CSS and HTML components mapped to what, after talking to developers, or I talk to them all the time, but they told me how the actual rendering engine in Chrome worked. Right, they had OpenGL context, and they were painting stuff on the screen, and so I took that into consideration when designing even like writing the HTML, CSS, so that they could just grab the thing, and these are videos capture of the real thing, which is kind of fun, and they would basically implement it in their native code, like C++, OpenGL. So it was a great process, and the product is really nice. And this is part of my work on material design. We shipped it in 2014. This is me at work after all this. They grabbed me to help them start the VR team. And we're just a bunch of crazy people. We literally look like this all day, every day. And this is why I go to work every day. It's my friend Robbie Tilton. We're just cranking things, trying them. It's really a great environment, working very small teams. I'll talk about this in a minute. Something like maybe last thing about life at Google, you might have heard about the 20% time, like what is it and stuff. A lot of companies do that now, actually, but I think it came from Google. And this is about you can spend up to a day out of the week, if you have approval, blah, 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 to help somebody else in the company or to make your own project but it could be completely unrelated to your project. I find that very refreshing because even self-driving cars, even VR, like you do the same thing all the time. You just want to go to work with different people, work on some other problems. It's just fun, and you can get inspiration from that and network a lot. So this is me working my 20% time on the weekend at my house in the woods. So what I'm doing actually, I'm doing sound design across products at Google. I mean, not all the time, but sometimes. And I work on the doodles. And so I'm kind of like honorary member of the doodle team. And whenever they're making an interactive game, there's a ton of them, they spend months on this stuff, like a ton of people. You wouldn't believe how much work, how much resources they put behind these things. Always amazed. And so I go there, make sounds. And you saw me earlier like hitting this thing. It was for the anniversary of Google, and you could hit this piñata, you know, this thing that's hanging, and you hit it, you get candy out of it. So they asked me, we want sounds for that. So I hit a real piñata, so to speak. I grabbed a cardboard box in the woods and recorded a lot of them, and it was really fun. They heard it, they're like, hey, sounds like the real thing. And the thing also with sound design is you don't want to just like lift something out of like freesounds.com or something, because company like Google, you want to do your own thing, you want to own the IP. And personally, as a sound designer and musician, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night if I was just like sampling stuff out there. So fun stuff. I also work on the T-Rex game. Who's played this? All right, that's good. Yeah, it's teachers go crazy with this because at school when internet's down, it's just like boop boop. So it's a simple game. This came out of 20% project. People in the Chrome team, I was a Chrome UX. Just like one morning, they're like, maybe it was Project Corgi. I don't know what it was, but we always give like crazy names to projects. And we went in the room, like you had user research, designer, like it was a real project. And we just did all this crazy stuff. I had fun, just designed the game. I did the sounds, and we all kind of divide and conquer. But the game mechanics, how complicated they are, we worked on it. It's a very simple game. I'm going to talk about human-computer interfaces and where VR stands. Like, where are we going there? Like, why even do you care about this? Like, the Black Mirror is fine. Like, I can stare at it all day. Let's go back to Fortran. Now, it was before my time, obviously. But this was computers. Like, you talk to computers that way. It's like, I don't even know how that works. But we were there. Okay. Who has seen Hidden Figures? Okay. Now, I'm not very happy. You all have to see Hidden Figures. It's a great movie, and it talks about that era when the first IBM showed up and who was programming these computers in the first place, and how a verification happened because we weren't sure if the computer was doing the right thing. People were scared of them, kind of like self-driving cars, right? And it was like, what is this big machine? Very good movie. I really enjoyed it. Then there's this, okay, and then there's this, and then there's this, and then what about, okay, so what's next, or what's different? Because you'll still have the other stuff, it's fine. Let's talk about presence a little bit. Something interesting about VR is that when you design something, you're not designing something people will look at and remember that they use. Like, I sent a message in this app or whatever. When you make something in VR, even if it's something very simple, like you're in an empty room, there's a box in the middle, you can pick it up and toss it on the wall. Somehow it bounces around or something. And maybe you have a slider to change gravity, so you turn off gravity and the box kind of goes like this. Just that, you give it to people, they'll spend hours in it. Wow, this is amazing. Now, you take it off of their face, if they let you, and you talk to them a week later, and they'll describe their experience as in they were in that room. I picked up the box, man. It was flying around. It's totally different. They remember doing it. Or if you're playing tennis in VR, you remember playing tennis. Because you kind of were. It's just really cool. This happens when presence is... it's optimized for presence to happen. This is something kind of hard to do. Basically, the movements you do and what happens in the world maps really well with what you expect as a human in your real life. It doesn't have to be like this. It can be a crazy psychedelic flight through, crazy clouds that don't exist. But the presence is lower in these, or less in those experiences. An example of this: if you put the headset, you have a stereo vision, like left eye, right eye is different. And let's say your position is tracked in the world, and it's not always the case. I'll talk about this. You find yourself on the edge of this thing here. Your vision can actually focus on your feet, and it can focus on the cars under. you see the focus change. I mean, it's just like you're there. This is really crazy. The first time I tried something like this, I sat on the ground and said, I'm not going to step. I got really scared. And the person there was like, come on, man, just step off. And I just couldn't do it. It was amazing. Now I can because I just know it's not real. But it's really hard. It's like speaks to your brain. You can't help it. Even if it is not realistic, as I said, like a bunch of boxes, you still like, you don't care. Right? It's just like, man, it's real, man. It's just that, it's a street down there. So VR comes in several flavors right now. On the left side, there's like the very, very cheap Google Cardboard, which my team did right before I joined the team. This was 20% project. So very good to Google doing that. There's millions of these babies out there. You put like an old phone in it, Android, iOS, and you can launch these applications. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, whatever. But that's all VR is like this because it's in this new world, right? It's like the web in the 90s, GeoCities, baby, right? It's like most of them are like, I can't look at the screen, but some of them are really cool. So I think we're in the GeoCities time a little bit, maybe better. Middle, you have something we shipped in November, Google Daydream. It's mobile VR. Somebody might say it's just like cardboard, but it's not because it has a special version of Android that has that's really optimized, that's been rewritten to render things really fast. So when you turn your head in a Daydream optimized application, you have this very low latency called motion to photon. So literally, it's motion to photons, right? So it's like when I'm looking at you and I do this. If motion to photon is bad, I'll be like, whoa, 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 and I will, right? So, I don't want that. Motion to photons that's less than 20 milliseconds is really, really nice. With a high res on the phone there, not all phones are compatible with this. We have this like label called Daydream Ready. And our Pixel phone, Pixel XL, and there's a few more that are out that have that. Then you put them in there, you have the little controller. Okay, move on to this. Oh, this is what we call 3DOF, 3 degree of freedom. That means that you just have rotation. So you can turn your head, and because the phone doesn't really know how to move around, it just knows how you're turning your head. So it allows you to kind of be fixed in the world in a way. You can't just like, oh, there's a flower here, I'm going to walk, go down and pick it up, use my hand and like, or whatever, blow on it, petals everywhere. That would be really cool. It'd be easy to make, actually. But this is just 3DOF, so, you kind of turn your head, but for the price and availability, it's the best, best out there. On the right side, you have an HTC Vive. An Oculus Rift is very similar. They're systems that have these little antennas and controllers. Everything is tracked, plugged to a very expensive PC that's plugged to a power plant. So all of a sudden, you have much more processing power. You can do crazy stuff. This guy, you can actually go and pick up flowers, and you have controllers, so you can actually pick up a petal with your hand and look at it, and then throw it at something, and then it scales to a giant flower. I don't know. You can plant flowers that way. And this is awesome. So a lot of things I'm going to show you today will be assuming that you have this not 3DOF, but 6DOF. So XYZ rotation, XYZ translation. Because it's an interesting thing. Okay. Hashtag positive tech. All right, so this kid after that talks about he wants to be an architect, so great video. It's called Project Expeditions, Google Cardboard Expeditions. How many did we tell people so far? I don't know, 1 million more students across the world, including middle of the forest somewhere, middle of the desert, not just like Silicon Valley people. We're taking on expeditions. The teacher has the app, and it runs a different mode and tells the kids to go to look somewhere, and they can see where the kids are looking, and the kids can put on and take off this cardboard not strapped on. So it's very interesting to see them take it off and talk to people. This is sharks? Okay, it's a vine, so it's just going to keep looping. But the more you look, the more you watch them, the better they are. This went to my kids' school, 3rd grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, I think it was, or 6th grade, 8th grade. And so a few hundred students. It's kind of like donate your time, like spend a day and go out to schools, and the team's got these boxes. So we can run the expedition program. It's kind of like user research, right? You can go out there and observe the users. So cool to see the kids that are so engaged with the content that are presented with. If you're a teacher, I have kids, and I've taught kids before, and you can tell when they start like falling asleep, or they're like, I don't want to be here kind of thing. And some kids is fine, open a book that's completely outdated, very expensive. I don't sound cynical, do I? That has the wrong physics rules because that changes every year. And there, some kids are fine with that. Like my daughter, she loves the book, she's okay with it. She likes VR. For my son, I think having more hands-on experiences and just like, getting out of the way when there's a battle around you, like one of those history things, and you get home after that, a lot of kids are just like super amped with what they saw. It doesn't mean you replace education with VR and you replace the teachers and stuff, but the teachers were like, man, they're so excited, When I've been to classrooms, the kids just scream like you saw there, and the teachers got their script they can read, and one of the teachers was like, I don't need to talk to them. Just look at them. They're having so much fun. Like, let them have fun. And then they're all amped to hear about the rivers in the Amazon or whatever. The kid was going across. I have a bunch of videos like this. This kid was like, he says like, I'm wet, is what he says. And he goes around kind of like here, right? And what's interesting is the cardboard actually just does this rotation. So if he's going up the river, down the river or whatever, it doesn't do anything. The image stays the same. It will make you sick like crazy, and these kids didn't care. And he couldn't help it. He was in the river. I'm telling you, man, it's crazy. And these kids are going to be the user, very soon. And so I kind of tell my team is like user research, you got to bring those kids in, and we do. Like user research team goes there and looks at what they do. I love kids; they're amazing. By the way, the gold comes out of their mouth when you ask them questions about technology or your application or anything. So you got to study kids. If you legally can't grab kids from somewhere from the street, you can always like ask people. Well, not really. That sounds really bad. Ask people who have kids. That's better. Ask people around you. Do you have kids? Bring them in. So I guarantee it's like you're in design sprint the whole time. Like, whoa, hold on, I got to write this down. Just happened last week with my kids. Okay, cool. We make a couple of products that are both on HTC Vive and Oculus. We're very friendly, and we make products for everything. And I believe this is Tilt Brush. Who knows Tilt Brush? Dude, nobody knows it? That's cool. Oh, it's Google Earth VR, sorry. Whatever, it's cool. All right, so one thing here. Some of you might leave the room, or if I ask you right now, it's like, wow, VR is okay. But when you're in it, it's amazing, okay? And it's not just because I'm trying to sell VR to you, it's because I'm serious, you can't judge VR if you just like read some angry tech blogger who talks about it and maybe tried it for 5 minutes. Or maybe he's got a mission to try to make clickbait, so you click on him and you're like, that person seems so smart. But, man, you got to be in it. It's totally, the minute you put it on and somebody hands you the controllers, you see the controllers dancing in the air, you grab them, they're like, okay, just so you know, right now I'm sold. This thing is amazing. They're like, oh, I work in architecture. Holy crap, what can we do? Everybody just, whatever field they're in, oh, I'm a clothes designer. Like people go crazy. They see the application in everything they're doing. So this is cool. Another one? I think this is Tilt Brush. Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so tilt brush is what you saw. Don't need to describe it too much. But one thing I like to say is that, again, you're looking in 2D, one screen, a big room, very brightly lit. But imagine you're in there, you have this controller, and you see like a palette here, kind of like Photoshop. You know, you got a lot of like, oh, yes, there's an eraser and stuff. When you press that trigger and you start moving the controller around, you get this like fat, like light thing in front of you or whatever. There's a bunch of brushes in there. It's a painting program. It really is special because then you move around, you realize, what? It's staying in the air where I did it, right? So it's right there, and you can like go crazy. You can like draw a character and walk around it. You can also start scaling yourself down, kind of like, you know, on the phone, the pinching, you're like, and there's a slider, you see a dinosaur, and then you see, I think, an ant or something. It's so funny. So anyway, it's really special. Again, I could talk for an hour. You'll see, like, you'll still say, wow, it was cool. You try this thing, you go crazy. Okay, so I heard something yesterday in one of the talks. So we're talking about like the design patterns for application for the phones with and things like material design and you know, user interface guideline and you know, stuff like that. Higgs. We're zeroing in on a bunch of stuff that works really well for our clients for the applications that we make, and that's great. What's interesting about this thing is that if you go in there with that assumption, you'll open Sketch or Photoshop and you'll go to town and you'll end up with something that's like a floating TV, right? Or a bunch of floating TVs because everything is flat and you're just kind of like, maybe it looks really nice. Everybody's like, I want to buy this. And you're like, we do VR. Just watch a little bit. You need to make these things differently. What I tell people is actually, people who are from UX, kind of like traditional UX stuff, getting into VR is the best thing ever because you have a different background than the people who are usually into VR right now, who the teams have a lot of people from the game industry. So game designers is a very different thing. The patterns are different. Games can be a little wacky, right? I try to make different games that work, and you know, it's got crazy drop shadows everywhere. So it's fun. You can really embrace that, and people like it. They like it better than if it looked like material design, right? You're like, hey, I want that thing to just fly around and make bloop, bloop, make like crazy noises because you're playing right now. So these people are into VR right now, and that's really good. You want these people so that it's not just Sketch and Photoshop, ship it. But at the same time, there's an opportunity, people, like Gold Rush opportunity for all of you or a bunch of you to say, I'm going to get into VR. At home, you make some stuff because you'd be surprised how beneficial it is. And the stuff you can come up with maybe don't exist yet in VR because those people, you people, are not in it yet. So, you know, it's like when I got into the web, making web design stuff in 97, 98, 99, Gold Rush as well, a lot of Flash. Ooh, Flash is bad. But back in the day, it wasn't. It was amazing. It's kind of like Unity now or some of the frameworks that we have. It was just, it unleashed your creativity. Plus the other websites that were not Flash, 97, you know, they weren't great either. So like you basically were all of a sudden you had something amazing. And it's a very similar kind of feeling right now. The community in VR is very similar to the community back in those days. If you were around, a lot of forums, people helping each other. We see that with the community, with web design as well. It's very similar in VR. So first we're going to talk about comfort. We're going to talk about these 4 things very quickly. Comfort, vision. So we're humans. So put your finger like this in front of you, like the slide. Come on, believe me, you got to do it. I'm checking. Yeah, you in the back? Okay, cool. So now you hold it for an hour. So now look at me, and when you look at me, you see 2 fingers. Now, I mean, you know that, but it's kind of fun to get in the head of the user. Now, if you look at your finger, I'm blurry, you know, so you can move on. But what's interesting about this is because you're designing things for people who have eyes, who are like, they're humans, right? And so you have to kind of rethink stuff as well. So if you just assume, I'm a great designer, we're going to place something right here, like, are you able to look at it? Are you able to focus on it? And if you say, I'm going to place something right here, and then they're interacting with something back there, like if you make a driving game and there's a dashboard, and then you're supposed to look at the road all the time. If you keep looking here, looking here, looking here, looking here, I guess a real car is similar, but people can get a little bit like, oh man, it's uncomfortable. They can't even explain it. When you do user research, you write, the person couldn't explain why, but you know, so it's kind of not really good data. It's really hard. You really have to understand the physiology of people. You can't like bring in doctors even to like observe people. Maybe eye doctors. I don't know. You know, you could do that. Interesting. Something else is happening is the headset. Let's see if I can put the headset on with the rest of the stuff and still walk around and not hurt myself. Oh my God. Okay, so right now, if I look around, I just see black because I'm just kind of pretending. But if I was running an application right now, I would actually see about like, I would see about this much or this much, which is pretty good for, the headsets today. But then there's even a smaller field of view where you can comfortably scan information without turning your head too much. And so I think we usually try to optimize for 60 degrees. You can see more, like you see pretty far, but you don't want people to have to turn around. Again, you're not designing for a tiny phone, you're designing for this thing that's around people. So you have to take that into account, this field of view thing. A lot of these things is you can find numbers online, blah, blah, blah. You just have to try stuff. VR is about, good VR, prototyping, and design is about making things and trying them as much as possible as you're designing them. Something else you should know is like, okay, talked about motion sickness earlier. So the way we work is that cochlea is the inner ear. I'm not a doctor, so I'm going to mess it up. This is what knows, like if you're closing your eyes and you move around, you kind of know that you're moving around or that you're on a boat that's moving or something like that. Now, it should be synchronized with the inertial measurement unit, the accelerometer and gyro that's in your phone right now, at least in 3DOF, and then the other one with the controllers. If these things don't match, you get sick. It's just like something is wrong, This is one of those I was telling you about, like you move and these things just kind of bobbling around and taking a while to move with you. You must stare at the 15 minutes. Okay, I'm going to stop it. So I don't need to comment on this, but don't do this, right? You need to keep a stable horizon. So what my team does is we try a bunch of stuff. We present at conferences like, so then when you go, you just don't waste a few hours trying and getting sick. And your users be happy. When we do also the developer relation team, I'm not in that team. I'm always like super excited about it because I consider myself, I can put the hat on the third party, like using this stuff because it's so exciting. And we help them, like, hey, we tried your game, you submitted, there's this thing kind of like crazy. And so we, help them. And it's really nice to see that because it's hard to know these things. It really is. You're going to have to try them. And you can't just know everything by trying everything that's out there. There's more and more apps, but chances are whatever you try, nobody's tried it before. Something else is the movement. So let's say you're in, you have movements, it's like accelerating. So if you play Mario Kart in there or something like that, or a driving game, and it's like a real car, it goes and like accelerate, right? But people are going to get sick and it's going to like, what's going on? Like, I don't understand. It's how a car works. You're not really in a car. What happens at constant velocity in a car is that you're not going to really feel it's moving until you brake or accelerate more, right? I mean, you'll feel the ground and, there's friction there. But if you have a system that basically have them pretty much start at the right velocity, like automatically, or is in steps, what happens is it's just more comfortable because they're not really moving. So this is a nice trick. Now, you might have a game that's all about acceleration curves and stuff, but maybe it's about making it's a game to become, I don't know, whatever. Psychological comfort. This is scary. This is what I talked about earlier. You don't want this. Except if you have a game about being scared of heights. If you have a game about being scared of heights, people will buy it because they know. You say, this is to make you sick or scared. And people will buy it. Like, seriously, there's a bunch of scary games out there. People buy this stuff. So I'm not saying don't do it, but just know that people might get really worried about this. Might get worried to be like this as well. So if you do this, just know that you might want to make sure you test it. And also with this kind of stuff, you can see there's something right in front of my friend Alex there. And the problem also is that that person's going to be forced to focus. And if you keep focusing on something really close, it might be uncomfortable, especially in VR. You just have to try stuff. This is a weird system where the glass is right in front of you, but then it has almost like a Photoshop pinch, pillow type of filter on it. And then there's lenses on your headset that unbends the image, so to speak, and distorts it, and it appears further away and flat. And so there's a lot going on in there. I believe that you just have to watch out for the distance. There's no hard numbers. We try to give some to people, but it just depends on your experience and how much things are moving as well, how big they are. Let's talk about immersion a little bit. So that thing was awesome. I talked about just cubes in the world and people loving it. So this is one of the best things we built. And again, it's a screen, you can't tell. But when you're in this thing, what happens is the environment really reacts to you. You get these controllers and you touch something and it just blinks, boom, white. And then you push it and it just bounces around, and you can like push these rows of cubes, and they can like compress and just explode. It's just really, really fun. It's very special to be in there because things are so reactive. This was built a while back. The bunch of stuff I'm showing you were built a while back when there was not as much VR content as now. So everything we built were like, holy crap, no one's built this before. So it's still the case. Back then, just boxes, you push them around. That was really amazing. So you have to make things really react. Something else that happens is if you want to show that something has movement, you can use little tricks from the game design community. That in this case, there's a belt there, and it's moving. And what's moving really is the textures being, the texture UVs being animated. Because it has like this map that's a little bit noisy on it. It's literally like open Photoshop, generate noise, save an image, boom, normal map, or light map. And so you can actually get a lot out of those kind of tricks. If you have, let's say, in the real world, if you approach a white wall, it's not really going to be white. You'll see your shadow. There's going to be a little bit of grain on it. If you touch the wall, it's not going to be entirely flat. It's not a mirror, right? And so you keep track of these things. You can't help it. And so in VR, it's easy to make white wall, and then person gets close to it. They don't know if they're just floating around in some white space, if they're moving or not, and they can get very sick and disoriented because of that. So adding texture to things is really, really good. So kind of put this kind of shader on everything and then tune it down. That was one of the first 3 DOF-based games for Daydream. So my team was in charge of spending a couple weeks. I think we built 13 games in like 2 weeks, 4 people. And this is the controller for Daydream. It's the first mobile VR like controller you're holding. So it knows it's like a gyro. It only knows like kind of like the acceleration. It's kind of like a phone. But when you use it in VR, you can actually do this. It's like, holy crap. Is it like tracking my position? It's not, but we have a virtual arm model in there, kind of like knows how humans are made. So when they do this, we kind of know it has to do this. So we kind of fake it. This was one of the first ones. I think we actually modified the Vive SDK. I was using the Vive to prototype this because this didn't exist. And so we kind of commented out some lines in the C# code so it wouldn't move the position of the controller. Sorry, it shows you that you grab whatever you have and you modify it, you make it work so you can try. So we don't wait 6 months for the product to come out, but this is for the product when it comes out. So you kind of like chicken and thing. So we made it work. This was interesting. So top left corner, you can see me walk around in RR, real reality. And I am evolving in a very small space. But what I'm experiencing is this world that's like really massive. Think you're inside Mario 64. It's a little old, I guess, but if you're a retro person, you'll like that. And so we're asking the person to turn around and then walk on the ridge, and then we ask them to like turn to the left to go down slides. And it's just like this thing that keeps going. And people were convinced, like, hey, this is a really huge space. I mean, they're engineers, they're people who worked at Pixar and stuff. They know this stuff, right? It's hard to impress these people. But I've seen people take this off with huge eyes like, wow, I was convinced that the room was bigger. And these people are like to stay stoic, like they're cool and stuff. But I've seen people just turn 5-year-olds in there. Really fun. So, the limitation is you walk around and I'm just going to hit the desk, turn around, there's another desk. It's just a problem. So, man, you don't deal with that kind of stuff on the little screen. So it's just really fun to try to find answers. That's one of them. I don't know. You might try this and it doesn't work for you. But it's just sharing it with the community. Let's talk about environments a little. This is I hate this thing cutting. This is the home of Daydream. So this is with a controller. You can point and click on things. So what you want to do is, you see the environment, it's got these trees, it's got actually flying birds, and it's got little foxes and things like that. It's very interesting. It's a real interesting world to kind of turn your head around and look. It also has stuff closer to you, stuff further away, so you have the nice depth experience. So the point is, instead of being in a void or in some kind of weird, like maybe a space station and there's stars, I don't know, it's not very interesting. You're in the world that's definitely a destination you want to go to. And then what you want to do is make it alive. So in this case, you can see we played around with the grass, and this didn't ship, but it's one of the things we try. Now, if you open Photoshop or Sketch, you can't try that. You really have to be in Unity. We use Unity a lot. Today, there was a really great talk. I think Dale, if I remember the name, presented. Make sure you go watch the YouTube clip if if you missed it. He talks more in depth how to make these things. Interactions. So, okay. Well, in real world, you look at your hand, they're hands, right? And then you can do things with hands. But in VR, they can be anything. A laser pointer in a very brightly lit room that you can't really see anything. It can be hands that are cut, which is kind of scary. It can be a racket, and you can play this game. This is really fun. Scary, like the ball just comes flying at you. You can even flip pancakes in VR. This actually ended up being like a mini game and Daydream Playground, something we shipped with a third party, so we provided that. It was one of the first 3DOF games we made. It's really fun, actually. It works pretty well. Direct manipulation is very interesting. So as I said earlier, picking up that flower and looking at it is very powerful. You feel like you're really there. This is a drum thing we built in the beginning of our prototyping process quite a long time ago, maybe 2 years ago or more. And you could pick up these things and play again on 2D screen, blah, blah, blah. But if you're there, you pick up this thing on the ground and you lift it. That drum might be like this big. Just lifting something that's massive, but it feels weightless, is a very interesting experience because part of your brain tells you, I'm lifting it, man. It's really there, but it's not. It's just kind of strange, but people can't help it. They're really there. What's interesting about this also is a couple things. People started building forts out of this and sitting in the forts. It was really cool to see this just as a construction game, which inspired us to build other things later. It's like people like to build things in VR with, moving them around. So we built other things after that were inspired by this very simple prototype. Something else we saw is we learned a lot about ergonomics. Because in our hallways, we were building this and grab people, Lindsay, come here, and, different people, Mike, come here. And we would just give it to them, and we wanted to just watch it. It's like user research, like you press play in the editor, and you watch it. And it's not like a study with, I'm not a researcher, but just a quick check to see how people use stuff. What we saw was the other engineers that works with me, and there's two of us building this in 5 days. He's very tall. He's like 25 feet tall, like 5 meters tall, whatever. It feels like I'm always looking up to talk to him. So this guy, we were using Git, so I check in the Unity project. He readjusts the drum so, it's comfortable for him and checks it in. I'm like, dude, I can't use it. So then we're like, oh, okay, let's make it so you can move them. And this was the best part of the thing, was just moving stuff around. And so it's one of those things that we try to make it easy for us to develop so I could develop and he could develop. But then what we saw is people come in and put the headset on, and we're like, oh, can you play the drums? We didn't tell them how to use it. They just had this controller. The trigger is like to hold an object, basically. And we saw people who were smaller grab the drums, lower them, start playing. They didn't say, ooh, look, I can move them to make it more ergonomic. But they did. They made the interface more ergonomic because we just had this debug feature turned on, basically. We're like, ooh. It was pretty cool. So it's the kind of stuff you learn about it. So you let people do that. Then imagine you synchronize that with your Google account or something like that, cloud-based setting. Anytime you try something in VR, things are, at your height. So it's really fun to try stuff. You get a lot of ideas from it. Again, it's like so many rocks to turn over and look under. This is my friend Stefan. It's the guy who's 5 meters tall, and he's German, and he's amazing, really smart guy. He's actually like world record, mid-size RoboCup. It's like robots playing soccer. It's crazy stuff. It's super cool. He had one on his desk. So anyway, what we did is we grab a watering can. We put like water in a bag inside, like one of those little plastic bags, and we hooked up one of the prototype controllers, like early version of prototype for Vive, and we gave it to people, and people what they did is they picked it up, and they were like, I'm holding a watering can, and I can move it around, feel the water slosh around, and right away they knew how to use this app to grow seeds, because they were like, oh, you just do this. Now, if we didn't have the watering can visible, at least in VR, if you use Photoshop or Sketch to design this, like, first we put buttons in the air. It's like, well, hold on for a second, can you do it without that? And it was like, this works so well, right? And then you can just do something and it's not a watering can anymore and do something else. If you're really explicit with it and it feels like very skeuomorphic, ooh, I'm sorry, skeuomorphic, but it's better than if it was like, oh, it's clean and designy, it's one color block. It's like, okay, fine. It's great, some cases. For this, just go all the way, go skeuomorphic, man. Move back from that if you want to be all like, designy and stuff. I've done that before. design. I worked in material design. So anyway, people knew how to use this. Very interesting stuff. You can give people use superpowers. Wait for it. Oh yeah. You know, pinch to zoom. Oh, I scale it like this. So we just give users superpowers. You're not in the real world, so you can break the rules all you want. I'll talk about this later. You can also #speaker tree. You can also, okay, you build something when you have real code all the time. You can actually go and turn things on and off. And if you're testing something, things like cloning, like there's a feature in there. It's a shopping experience actually to like IKEA catalog kind of thing. And we had a feature in there just for us that allowed you to just push a button and clone something. And we turned it on in one of those user research things, and we watched people do this. So people actually found the best use case for this application, which was like, I don't know, making stuff? So we just... I want that. I love speakers. I want it. So it was cool to see, like, let people break it. Now, if you're making a messaging app and you have a very structured, known pattern, you know, you're like, it's a little bit scary to go and change stuff around. You can break patterns, but then a lot of people are going to be pissed off. People never did this, you know, in the computer or whatever, and they never built speaker trees in the real world, except if they took some drugs or something. And so this was the best feature. It's like, okay, debug features on. That's an interesting one as well. Watch it. Google Photos. All of them were built 2 people, 5 days. Ooh, vacuum cleaner. Talk about skewer market. All right, so this is an interesting one. Just a quick thing. You pick up a picture. There's a note behind it. At one point, the first thing happened, I picked up a picture and threw it on the wall. The wall's like an object that knows how to display something. It's like, I'm a wall, I'm this big, I have this like attraction, like, you know, gravity is there, and there's things like attract objects. And all of a sudden, it's like, well, the wall is this big. Boom, picture becomes huge when you throw at it. Maybe you have some other rules, like you throw a second one and it makes like a nice grid. Stuff like that, it's pretty cool. There's a lot of that. What this was looking at is that in VR, you pick up stuff. Because you're moving around, you're always shaking, and you can't help it. It's really hard to make things really precise, position objects really, really precisely. So we did a thing where no matter what you did, just threw stuff around and good stuff happened. You're like, this is what I wanted. Let's talk about social. So people might say, it's VR, you know, I have a toaster on my face, like I'm not going to talk to somebody about it, and I'm getting really angry right now because you're doing VR because it's not social. Okay, 1 second. So, and other companies have shown some really nice social examples recently. This is something we looked at. We looked at this thing. Oh. I think this was me dancing. So, you can see this like little eyes on the cardboard thing. It's not really cardboard, it's like actual Vive system. You can walk around. There's 2 Vive rooms. So 2 rooms with this very expensive system. Gotta love having funding, you know. You can tell what the person is thinking, kind of, because we have these like googly eyes on them. But we don't know where the eyes are looking. There's no eye tracking. So we're like, okay, when you're turning to the left kind of fast, you move the pupils in that direction, kind of like you do some kind of smoothing or something, like a lerp movement. And it's amazing how much you get out of it. You remove the eyes, it's super scary. A person looks at you like cardboard looks at you like, where are you looking? So even by just like slapping googly eyes on something, you get a lot of experience, a lot of presence. This is people who find themselves in VR and they're like, I don't know what to tell this person. Very awkward. What do we do? Okay, I don't want to talk to you. You're kind of scary. So what you do is you give them an experience to do together. So this is like you sit down at home. You have coffee books, coffees. You kind of like if you were just sitting there, kind of looking at each other, it would be kind of awkward. So give them something to do, making a puzzle, and then yay, and then they start talking. And we did voice over IP, and it was just really social, really fun. And that person could be in Japan or something. I mean, we love like, you know, Skype, FaceTime, stuff like that. So you think about stuff like that as well in VR. Trolling in VR, this one's interesting. So we built this shopping experience, like some fancy store in San Francisco to buy Viking helmets, which are actually were not Vikings, didn't wear them, but whatever. And then what happened is we learned something interesting. We wanted to know, will people shop in VR, like shopping cart and all that, but we learned something else. Well, first of all, we learned that if you just make the person grab glasses, they will punch the other person if they're in the same room to touch them, but their hand's going to end up here, which will be trolling. Another thing that's trolling is the first person didn't mean to be mean, but this happened. The person put a hat on the other person, couldn't see, took off the headset, they're like, I hate this, and couldn't really tell why, they on the moment, they kind of forgot really what happened, but we realized this is what happened, so it's interesting. Do you snap it? Do you make it less realistic? Or do you have limitations, like how close it can be to their eyes? It's just a lot of things you can do, and getting that right, it would take a lot of iterations. Just really good findings. Dancing game, make music. This is me. I didn't know there was a camera. Well, I knew it was filmed, but you forget about it, so. Oh, yeah, okay. So you know what just happened, right? So people will just get really excited. Now, nobody was in the room with me, but most of the time we have other people, like the team huddles and demos, like, okay, 2 minutes, set. And people still dance and had fun, even though their boss was watching them or whatever. They just don't care. They're like, I'm somewhere else. Like, I'm making music with my friend. So really cool. Okay, briefly going to talk about this. What time is it? No, but what is it? Okay. Okay, we have a device called Tango, and Tango is a telephone, it's a telephone, a phone that has a bunch of sensors that are for depth tracking, and really quick. 6 Duff phones.
These sensors make over 250,000 3D measurements every single second, updating the position and rotation of the phone.
All right, so we're using this as a platform for augmented reality, and it's part of the Daydream, just larger VR AR team. And so right now I'm focusing on that, building a lot of experiments in the system. And so I'm going to skip some stuff. People build stuff with it. There's SDK, so you can place things on the floor, and when you move the device around, it stays on the floor because it's got all these sensors on it. Something interesting we learned is that when there are things in the camera view, people ignore what's around it, what's around the screen. You place all these buttons, people just don't see them, just looking through it. I think camera apps probably have the same problem. You just look through the camera and ignore the stuff around. Look at the center of this. And tell me how many dots you see. Don't cheat, don't look around. I don't know, you see 2, 6, or whatever. There's actually 12 of them there. But it illustrates the problem of you're looking something and you just don't see everything around. It's just you see a very small, your angular resolution is fairly small, actually. This is an example of, for user researchers out there, people who work with user research, hopefully everybody. This is a slide, I literally copy and pasted a slide that the team gave us after testing some stuff. So we get this, this was going on, recommendation, blah, blah, blah. And this is nice because the developers get this, they have real data, so it's not just I don't like it, we're not doing this. It's just hey, look what happened, right? User research is really great for that. And this turns into even bug list, engineers really own this and want to fix it. This is an example of that. I'm going to skip some stuff really quick. Okay, prototyping. This fast, this few people. And we built way more than 100 apps. Beginning, it was a small team of 4, and then now it's across the VR AR team. We use this process of 1 to 2 weeks, 2 to 3 people, and we just crank things out. Okay, we built a ton of stuff. You saw some of it earlier. So people are how are you going to do this, blah, blah, blah. Now they believe us because it's been so many weeks. And then I tell them, you build the tip of the iceberg, and people will come to you and describe the rest. And no meetings. Who's got a lot of meetings? Oh, really? No meetings? Okay, so you're part of the club. When we're doing this, leave us alone. And we're not mean about it. We're do you want to see this game in 5 days? Leave us alone. So on Mondays, we meet. We look at what we did the week before. User research kind of says, hey, this happened Friday, blah, blah, blah. Okay, boom. What are we doing next week? And we just cut the code. Even if we didn't do everything we wanted, we scoped it down. We just stop it. And just another round, every week. So we start with a story. This is what we do. Actually, this stuff turns into specs for developers. I literally print these things. We didn't do this, but it's fun. It's just what happens if you're just oh man. And so this starts like this. We don't start in Sketch, Photoshop, even Unity. We go and draw a story. Critical user journeys, we call them. right? What happens is you start with a person, and this happens. Something else you do, this is my son, Soren. He's acting. I'm going to try to keep it together because I feel like crying when I see him. I'm so proud of him. But he's a great actor, actually, total natural. And what you do when you design these things, yeah, you draw something, but then you get up and you sit down and you're like, I'm piloting my spaceship. Somebody else like puts a card in front of you and you act it out basically. When you do that, you really know the things you're going to build. You understand better if your direction is good or bad or boring or whatever. And a lot of the time, the ideas we actually built came from acting sessions. If we need 3 or 4 people, we go out, hey, you come over here. What am I? Like, stand here, catch that ball. They just like catch it. And by doing this, you really, really learn a lot. You got to do the acting. You got to do the storyboarding. This is a really good example. Started with a storyboard. First morning we talked about it. It's taking drums and turn it into a text input system. So the way it was turned into was like a game, like 2 players, like almost like a TV show thing, and you have to type really fast. So then we turn it into this thing. That's what we do. That's the first day, Monday. And by Monday noon, we stop talking about the scope, nothing. We break it down by features, and then we print these things out, put it in people's desks, 2 of us desks. And then first day, there was a storyboard on my desk, and then I was in Unity, like Stefan was finishing another one. And then I modeled this environment. In Modo, I do some 3D modeling, and so did that. And then actually this worked. Like, wrote very, very simple code to make this thing. It wasn't fully functional. Then there was 4 other days where Stefan, like he's a great programmer. He and I took back and forth certain things. I did more of the UX stuff, like motion transition, things like that, how to display things. And he'd go in there and just do some really cool stuff. This is what it looks like. So you test with people very, very quickly. You grab a USB key, go into the lab, grab someone who doesn't know anything about it, and they use it. This is what it turns out to be. So interestingly, somebody took this. We showed it at Google I/O last year, and then we bring whole rigs into bars in San Francisco and invite people. Very open with stuff, which I really like. And then somebody was like, "Dude, I love it." And he went on. It's Normal VR's company, so he actually made a blog post with that video at the top. He's like, "I love these people. I love this thing. I want to make my own." And he made a really nice version, open sourced it. Now people can just grab this and make their own drum keys, is how we called it. So I felt really honored that it ended up being contributed to the community and people made it even better. So what is it good for? What else is it good for? I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. We did the education thing that was pretty cool, using Google Voice and everything else. And you could learn the Mandarin in there. That was a really nice experience. You could spend half an hour in there and learn quite a bit. So it was interesting to do that in there. This one's cool. This was called Architect, V-Architect. And we introduced this idea of with direct manipulation, this idea of snapping to other objects, and also having this idea of the right angles. So there's a lot of things going on here. It's a lot more fun to actually do it than just watch it. And something else happened is, you see this little chess piece here or whatever? Ooh, I want to go here. Boom, press a button and you're inside your house. That's cool. What's interesting about this is, as we were building this, and it's the first one of its kind, when we're doing this, we just had everything kind of working, with all the debug flags on and stuff. So we or somebody else, I don't remember, transported themselves into their modern, house. And what they did was they were small, and then they grabbed the wall and moved the wall. I mean, imagine you're here, that wall's that big, and you're you pick it here, it rotates like this and snaps there. It looks this big. It really does, more than the screen here. It's crazy stuff. It really is. People started giggling and freaking out. I'm like, okay, it's a feature. This was not a feature. We just didn't, we didn't turn it off when you're small. And it was really fun. You get this by trying the first day you have something working. As soon as they can put the headset on, you just give it to somebody. And don't do the whole, I'm not going to show you until it's perfect thing, because it's going to be better to just use it with people. Try it with people. We get people playing music together. Very fun. Got the shopping experience there. You can see prices of things. You can actually clone objects out of the catalog. The storytelling example was interesting. Again, the community made a bunch of these things later, even better. But despite the prototype, you could record yourself moving objects and then overriding these things. And then I may or may not have rehearsed this talk in VR. I'll skip that, but it's a really good one. I want to thank you for being here, for letting me go over.